Episode 102. Did Jesus come from Zeus or Isis? The letter J. Dictionary.com. How did J get its sound? Both I and J were used interchangeably by scribes to express the sound of both the vowel and the consonant. It wasn't until 1524 when Gian Giorgio Trissino, an Italian Renaissance grammarian known as the father of the letter J, made a clear distinction between the two sounds. Trissino's contribution is important because once he distinguished the soft J sound, as in jam, probably a lone sound, he was able to identify the Greek Zeus, a translation of the Hebrew Yahshooah, as the modern English Jesus. Thus, the current phoneme for J was born. It always goes back to Jesus, per dictionary.com. So, the letter J is not even 500 years old, but it all goes back to Jesus? Okay. Britannica.com. William Tyndale, the English scholar, was a biblical translator, humanist, and Protestant martyr. He was educated at the University of Oxford and became an instructor at the University of Cambridge, where in 1521 he fell in with a group of humanist scholars meeting at the White Horse Inn. Tyndale became convinced that the Bible alone should determine the practices and doctrines of the church, and that all believers should be able to read the Bible in their own language. Because of the influence of printing and a demand for scriptures in the vernacular, William Tyndale began working on a New Testament translation directly from the Greek in 1523. After church authorities in England prevented him from translating the Bible there, he went to Germany in 1524, receiving financial support from wealthy London merchants. His New Testament translation was completed in July 1525 and printed at Cologne. Again, under pressure, this time from the city authorities, Tyndale fled to Worms, where two more editions were published in 1525. The first copies were smuggled into England in 1526, where they were at once proscribed. And we discussed William Tyndale in a prior episode regarding the Bible in Biblos. Tyndale received his tutelage from England. The letter J was created in 1524 and the New Testament translated into English in 1525 and published in 1526. Tyndale inserted the name Jesus in the Bible. This is how Jesus got into the Bible. The letter J replaced the letter I. Zeus is now Jesus. Now, Zeus sounds like the Greek god Zeus, and it also looks like and sounds exactly like Isis. If you take the E out, you get Isis. Let's review the Hebrew words for Jesus. Strong Hebrew Lexicon H3442. Yahshooah, he will save. Yahshooah comes from the Hebrew word Joshua at H3091. Jesus in Greek. Per the Strong Greek Lexicon G2424, Jesus is the Greek form of Joshua. The Strong Hebrew Lexicon for Joshua is H3091. It is Yahshooah. Yahshooah is from the Hebrew words H3068 and H3467. The Hebrew lexicon H3068 is Jehovah. So Joshua comes from the Hebrew word Jehovah. Now Jehovah comes from H1961, which is Ha-Yah. Jehovah comes from Ha-Yah. Yahshooah or Joshua also comes from H3467. That is Yasha, Yasha. The key word and sound we're seeing in the Hebrew translations of Joshua is the word Yah. Jesus comes from the word Joshua. And we see that Yah is the foundation for Joshua or Yahshooah and the foundation of Jehovah or Ha-Yah. Again, Jesus is the Greek form for Joshua. Let's look at the origin of Yah. Lord means Yah in Hebrew per H3050. It comes from or contracted for H3068, which takes us back to Jehovah, meaning the same, Jah, the sacred name. So now Jesus comes from Joshua, Joshua comes from Jehovah, and Yah comes from Jehovah as well. Jah, Jehovah in the shortened form, the proper name of the one true God. J is for the names ending with Ayah or Jah. Origin from H3068, Jehovah. Yah, YHWH, Yahweh. Hence we get the word Yahshooah. World History Encyclopedia.org states, Ayah or Yah is a god of the moon who figures prominently in the Egyptian calendar. Asherah is a Hebrew word for what was either a goddess or a cultic object, or perhaps both. Although many see evidence for Asherah being an individual goddess known to the Israelites, some scholars believe that the context of the word primarily denotes it as a cultic object. As Mark Smith suggests in the early history of God, Yahweh, and the other deities in ancient Israel. From Canaanite mythology, El's traditions and epithets were absorbed into the construct of the Israelite Yahweh, the God of the Hebrew Bible, and therefore it is likely that they assimilated Atarat and Asherah as well. Archaeological evidence for this can be found in the 8th century BC Kuntilit Ajrud inscriptions found in the northeast part of the Sinai Peninsula. These inscriptions were written in Hebrew and translate as Yahweh and his Asherah. Asherah is also associated with Yahweh in a similar possessive sentence in the 8th century BC Kerbet el-Kom inscriptions found in the West Bank. Truth wars had to change their entire framework because Israel received their doctrine and their customs from Egypt. Although the Bible, and specifically the book of Exodus, presents Yahweh as the God of the Israelites, there are many passages which make clear that this deity was also worshipped by other people in Canaan. Amsalag notes that the Edomites, the Kenites, the Moabites, and the Midianites all worshipped Yahweh to one degree or another, and that there is evidence the Edomites who operated the mines at Timnah converted an earlier Egyptian temple of Hathor to the worship of Yahweh. Although the biblical narratives depict Yahweh as the sole creator God, Lord of the universe, and God of the Israelites especially, initially he seems to have been Canaanite in origin and subordinate to the supreme God El. Here is the Truth Wars timeline that we've been referencing for some time now, and it has not changed. This is the history of Christianity, the Hebrewites, Israelites. This is the foundation of religion, period. The name Jesus and Yah and all its variations come from a foundation or history of paganism, which led to the production of the Torah, Bibles, etc. This timeline still remains true. Look at the previous translations in the Perseus, historical records of St. Jerome, showing Yahweh used throughout the entire Bible. And remember, we talked about St. Jerome many times and how he took upon himself to translate the New Testament and then redo the translation of the Old Testament. He has put Yahweh throughout the entire Bible. But this is not the case for the current Bibles that's been in circulation in our time. So St. Jerome was using Yahweh in his Bible, but we have something totally different. Yahweh is nowhere in our English Bibles. In the beginning of the 1st century AD, there was no one named Jesus, but there were gods, El, Yah, Zeus, and Isis, which all came before Christ. Let's look at Zeus and Isis. Aeschylus states in the Perseus, Hail, sovereign Zeus, and you kindly knight, you who have been given us great glory, you who cast your meshed snare upon the towered walls of Troy, so that neither old nor young could overleap the huge enslaving net of all conquering destruction. Great Zeus it is, Lord of hosts and guest, whom I revere. He has brought this to pass. He long kept his bow bent against Alexander, until his boat would neither fall short of the mark nor flying beyond the stars be launched in vain. Aeschylus was in 525 to 456 BC. He was one of the great writers of the Greek tragedy in the 5th century BC classical Athens. Euripides, Iphigenia, 150 in the Perseus. Hail to you, bright lamp of day and light of Zeus. Hail, Zeus. And Euripides is known to have been one of the greatest authors of Greek tragedy in the 5th century BC. Aeschylus and Euripides all declared Hail Zeus in their writings. What does Hail Zeus sound like? Jesus. It sounds like Jesus in Spanish. Hail Zeus. Jesus in Spanish. Element Encyclopedia of Secret Signs and Symbols describes Zeus as the father like Odin of thunder and king of all gods. His kingdom, the sky itself, dispenser of justice. His word is law. Zeus sits at the head of the 12 Olympian deities. For example, in the same way that Christ sat among his 12 disciples, or King Arthur with his 12 knights at the round table. What? Zeus was the king of the 12 Olympian gods and the supreme god in Greek religion. Tacitus Discourses 1.9 in the Perseus references the Apostle Paul. So Jesus said, Our Father which art in heaven. Cleanthus in his hymn to Zeus writes these words here in Greek. Compares to Acts of Apostles 17:28, where Paul quotes these words. What? It is not true then that the conception of parental deity, as it has been asserted, was unknown before the teaching of Jesus, and after the time of Jesus unknown to those Greeks who were unacquainted with his teaching. Here is evidence that Paul is quoting from the Cleanthus hymn to Zeus in Acts 17:28. BibleHub.com commentary for Acts 17:28. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Ellicott's commentary for English readers states, as certain also of your own poets have said. The quotation has a special interest, as been taken from a poet who was a countryman of St. Paul's. Aratus, probably of Tarsus, 272 BC, has written a didactic poem under the title of Phenomena, comprising the main facts of astronomical and meteorological science as then known. It opens with an invocation to Zeus, which contains the words that St. Paul quotes. Like words are found in a hymn to Zeus by Cleanthus, 300 BC. Both passages are worth quoting. Number 1, from Zeus began. Never let us leave his name unloved. With him, with Zeus are filled all paths we thread, and all the marts of men, filled to the sea, and every creek and bay, and all, in all things, need we help of Zeus, for we too are his offspring. Aratus, Phenom 1:5. The second passage, most glorious of immortals, many named, almighty and forever, thee, O Zeus, sovereign o'er nature, guiding with thy hand all things that are, we greet with praises. thee. Thus meet that mortals call with one accord. For we thine offspring are, and we alone of all that live and move upon this earth. Let's read that again. For we alone of all that live and move upon this earth. This sounds like for in him we live and move and have our being. For we thine offspring are, and we alone of all that live and move upon this earth receive the gift of imitative speech. This is Cleanthus' hymn to Zeus. Ellicott justifies Paul quoting from the poems of Aratus and Cleanthus, giving praises to Zeus and declaring they are of his offspring, as we live, move, and have our being in this dude. Ellicott says, the fact of the quotation would at once quicken the attention of the hearers. They would feel that they had not to deal with an illiterate Jew, like the traders and exorcists who were so common in Greek cities, but with a man of culture like their own, acquainted with the thoughts of some, at least, of their great poets. These are poems praising the pagan god of Zeus. So why would the people need to know about Zeus when Paul is supposed to be teaching them about Jesus? Unless Zeus is now Jesus? Make it make sense. Pulpit commentary per Bible Hub states, verse 28 for Acts 17, this is the proof that we have not far to go to find God. Our very life and being, every movement we make as living persons is proof that God is near. How does that justify anything? Nay, more than near, that he is with us and round about us, quickening us with his own life, upholding us by his own power, sustaining the being that we derive from him. Psalms 139, Psalms 23. Certain even of your own poets. Arstus of Tarsus, who has the exact words quoted by St. Paul, and Cleanthus of Assus, who has the exact Greek saying in the Perseus, as he had just defended himself from the imputation of introducing foreign gods by referring to an Athenian altar, so now for the same purpose he quotes one of their own Greek poets. For that statement, that man is the offspring of God. Acts 17:28. I don't understand how pulpit can justify any of this as normal, because it's not. Vincent's Word Studies commentary per Bible Hub states, we are also his offspring, a line from Aratus, a poet of Paul's own province of Cilicia. The same sentiment in almost the same words occurs in the fine hymn of Cleanthus to Jove, hence the words, some of your own poets. We can conclude that Paul quotes Zeus in his writings in the New Testament, regardless of how the commentators may try to justify or not justify this. Moving on. Element Encyclopedia of Secret Signs and Symbols describes Isis. The Greeks rendered the name of the Egyptian goddess Aset as Isis. She was considered the supreme mother goddess, parent of all other deities. As such, she personifies all the qualities of the other goddesses. Her influence even extended as far as the Rhine. She was called, like Mary the mother of Christ, the star of the sea. However, in the 6th century AD, her temple at Philae was turned into a Christian church. World History Encyclopedia. Isis' name comes from the Egyptian Aset, the seat, which referred to her stability and also the throne of Egypt, as she was considered the mother of every pharaoh through the king's association with Horus, Isis' son, queen of the throne. In time, she became so popular that all gods were considered mere aspects of Isis, and she was the only Egyptian deity worshipped by everyone in the country. She and her husband and son replaced the Theban triad of Ammon, Mut, and Khons, who had been the most popular trinity of gods in Egypt. Osiris, Isis, and Horus are referred to as the Abydos triad. Isis became the goddess of all the people of Egypt, every male and female, royal and common alike. This is Isis, the virgin goddess. Isis and Christianity. Isis dominated the religious sensibilities of the people at the same time that Christianity was taking form through the evangelical missions of St. Paul in 4262 AD or CE. The concept of the dying and reviving God, which had long been established through the Osiris myth, was now made manifest in the figure of the Son of God, Jesus the Christ. Okay. In time, epithets for Isis became those for the Virgin Mary, such as Mother of God and Queen of Heaven, as the new religion drew on the power of the older belief to establish itself. The worship of Isis was the most stubborn of pagan beliefs to rival the new faith and continued longer than any other. Thomas Wentworth, Higginson Atlantic Essays, The Greek Goddesses, states the Roman Catholic Church, with more wisdom of adaptation, has kept one goddess from the Greek, the transformed Demeter, with her miraculously born child, which is now become masculine, proceeds over every altar. Okay. Softened and beautified from the elder image, it is still the same. The same indeed with all the mythologic mothers, with the maternal goddess who sits with a glory around her head and a babe on her bosom, in every Buddhist house in China, or with Isis who yet nurses Horus on the monuments of Egypt. We've seen in different religions a mother holding a baby, Buddhists holding a baby, the Egyptian culture, their goddesses holding a baby. And then we have Mary holding baby Jesus. Let's keep going. As far as history can tell, this group first appeared in Christian art when used as a symbol in the Nestorian controversy by Cyril, who had spent most of his life in Egypt. Nestorius was condemned in the 5th century for asserting Mary to be the mother of the human nature of Jesus and not also of the divine. And it was at this time that the images of the Virgin and child were multiplied to protest against a heretic who had the minority of votes. After all, Christian ritualism is but a palimpsest. What is a palimpsest? A palimpsest is manuscripts that are reused or altered with visible traces of the earlier form. And if we go an inch below the surface, anywhere, there is some elder sanctity of Greece or Rome. This is the foundation of the Catholic Church. This is the foundation of Christianity and all religions. In historical records compiled in the Perseus, there are writers and historians using the name Zeus or Iesus. From the false book to the history of Scotland, from the description of Ireland to the process of Irish affairs, they are using the name Zeus or Isis in their writings. This is very interesting. So the key points to this podcast are: the letter J was created less than 500 years ago in 1524 by Gian Trissino. The New Testament was translated in English in 1525 and published in 1526 by Tyndale, who was trained in England. The letter J replaced the letter I, so his name went from Zeus or Isis to Jesus. Everyone quickly says that Jesus was not his name. His name is Yahshooah per the Hebrew lexicon. The Greek lexicon says his name was Jesus, the Greek form of Joshua. Yahshooah comes from Joshua. Yahshooah is Joshua in Hebrew. Yahshooah or Joshua comes from Jehovah. Jehovah comes from Yah. Yahshooah or Joshua also comes from Yahshua. Yah, Jah, YHWH or Yahweh comes from Jehovah. Jehovah comes from Yah. Yah in Hebrew is the sacred name and the proper name of the one true God. Yah before Christ was Ayah or Yah, a god of the moon. A Canaanite god, El, became Yahweh. Yahweh was a part of Asherah, the Canaanite goddess. Yahweh was worshipped in Canaan. Yah and all the variations of Yah is pagan. Everyone says his name was not Jesus. Then where did they get it from? Historical writings and poems cite Hail Zeus, which sounds like Jesus in Spanish. Zeus was the father of thunder, king of all gods, the supreme god, dispenser of justice. His word is law. He sits at the head of 12 Olympian gods, just as Jesus had 12 disciples. Paul quotes Zeus in Acts 17:28, and commentators verify this. Did Jesus come from Zeus? That's the million-dollar question. Isis, the supreme mother, virgin goddess, was called, like Mary, the mother of Christ, the star of the sea. Mother of all pharaohs, the only Egyptian deity worshipped by everyone in the country. The Isis epithets became the Virgin Mary's epithets. Osiris, Isis, and Horus, the Trinity. The Catholic Church kept one goddess of the Greek, who was like Isis and other goddesses. Zeus or Isis, Iesus, was used in historical writings. Did Zeus or Jesus come from Isis? That's another million-dollar question. The similarities between paganism and the Christian church are not mere coincidence. We did the math of the amount of revenue the Bible generates in episode 98. It's in the billions. If we don't do the research for the truth, who will? It's imperative that we pray, research, and repeat. It's hard, it's difficult, but we have to do the work. Please use the Truth Wars podcast as a foundation to begin researching everything these folks have given to us as the truth or their truth. The truth can only come when we seek wisdom and direction from the creator of heaven and earth, and then do the work by researching everything. Let's do the work.
As we seek truth, please seek truth with us. We don't claim to know everything. We just seek the creator of heaven and earth that does know everything. Let truth roar, let truth reign, let truth speak, and let truth set you and your entire family free.
Truth roars, truth reigns, truth speaks, truth sets me free. Oh, yes, it does. Please see our podcast disclaimer at truthwars.com. And thanks for watching, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.